Celeste Sinclair was never just a Southern belle. She was a force. While many saw her as the elegant wife of Ezra Sinclair, the former Marine turned political powerhouse, few realized she was a woman who could move entire economies with a single conversation. Celeste wasn't in hospitality anymore. She wasn't running a luxury restaurant. Instead, she had reinvented herself as one of the world's most sought-after geopolitical consultants, an elite crisis negotiator for world governments, Fortune 500 companies, and secretive high-stakes power players. If there was a deal too dangerous, a scandal too explosive, or a power shift too volatile, they didn't call lawyers. They called Celeste Sinclair. And tonight, she was about to stop a war. The client, a rogue king and a billion-dollar secret Celeste, was in Monaco, sitting at a private rooftop dinner overlooking the Mediterranean, draped in an emerald green silk gown, her voluminous shoulder-length hair perfectly styled despite the humidity. Across from her sat King Samir Al-Fahd, the ruler of an oil-rich Gulf nation, a man whose temper had nearly dragged the world into an economic catastrophe. Behind her, Ezra stood, watching every movement of the security guards in the room. His tan suit was immaculate, but his marine instincts never faded. He was always prepared. "Madame Sinclair," the king said, swirling a glass of whiskey. "I assume you know why you're here." Celeste smiled, placing her pearl-adorned hand over her crystal coupe of champagne. "I do. And I also know that if you handle this wrong, your country will be thrown into sanctions, economic collapse, and an international scandal." She leaned forward slightly. "That is why you need me." The king had a problem. A missing document that held the key to billions in offshore accounts, tied to Western governments, secret oil deals, and a hidden inheritance battle. If it leaked, it wouldn't just destroy his country. It would send shockwaves through Wall Street, the White House, and the European Union. And someone powerful, had stolen it. The theft and the chase Celeste had less than 48 hours to retrieve the document before an anonymous hacker leaked it to international intelligence agencies. Her first stop, Paris. A notorious ex-CIA asset named Leclerc had been spotted at an underground auction trying to sell information to the highest bidder. Celeste, now dressed in a sleek black gown and diamond studs, stepped into the gilded ballroom of a historic Parisian chateau, her every movement calculated. Ezra, disguised as a wealthy South African investor, held a glass of bourbon, keeping a watchful eye on the players in the room. A silver-haired man in a midnight blue tuxedo approached Celeste. "Madame Sinclair," Leclerc whispered. "I was expecting you." Celeste smiled. "Then you know I'm not leaving without what I came for." Leclerc chuckled. "Do you know how much your king is offering?" Celeste tilted her head, amused. "Do you know how much I can make you disappear?" The room fell silent. Ezra's hand tensed around his drink. Leclerc hesitated, then slid a golden envelope across the table. Inside was a key to a high-security vault in Geneva, where the real stolen document was being held. The final move, Geneva's high-stakes heist. Celeste and Ezra arrived in Geneva at midnight, their Porsche convertible slicing through the dark streets like a shadow. The document was being held in a bank vault so secure that world leaders trusted it with their darkest secrets. Ezra glanced at Celeste as they parked. "You ever break into a place like this before?" Celeste, adjusting her scarlet lipstick, smirked. "I don't break in, darling. I'm always invited." With a silk scarf wrapped around her head, she stepped out of the car and walked straight into the marble-floored bank. exuding Southern charm and untouchable confidence. Ezra, following behind, tapped his olive green tie twice, the silent signal for danger. The moment they reached the private security suite, the alarms went off. Someone had beat them to it. A shadowy figure sprinted through the halls with a silver briefcase in hand. Ezra moved first, marine instincts kicking in, but Celeste was faster, slipping off her stiletto heels and cutting the man off at the emergency exit. The thief, dressed in black, turned to run until he looked into Celeste's eyes and froze. "Madame Sinclair," he whispered, "you were never supposed to be here." Celeste smiled. "Well, I am. Now give me the briefcase." The power play and the final move. By sunrise, Celeste and Ezra were flying back to Monaco on the king's private jet, sipping on freshly brewed espresso as the stolen document sat secured in Celeste's leather handbag. The king was in shock when she handed it to him. "How?" he asked. Celeste simply smiled. "Because I'm Celeste Sinclair." The next morning, the world woke up to headlines of a last-minute peace deal brokered between the king's nation and the West. The document never saw the light of day. Celeste Sinclair saved a kingdom. And no one even knew she was there. The aftermath. Back in the South. 1 week later, Celeste and Ezra were back in South Carolina, sitting on the veranda of their historic home, enjoying sweet tea and beignets. Ezra smirked. "You ready for a break? Or are you going to stop another war next week?" Celeste, adjusting her pearl bracelet, sipped her tea. "Darling, I already have my next client." Ezra exhaled and chuckled. "Of course you do." Because Celeste Sinclair didn't just negotiate deals. She moved nations. She was the most powerful woman the world had never heard of, and she was just getting started.